Hello, everybody. My name is Brad Tallis from Autodesk. I want to welcome you to a special Fusion 360 live stream. Um, Give me a second here. I need to mute my computer. I have a guest speaker with me. As you can see, we're streaming through Zoom. So I have Jeff Smith. He's an industrial designer on the Fusion 360 team. And he's going to be talking about tips and tricks and just methodologies about surfacing. Before we bring him in, I want to remind everybody that there's going to be a special week-long series next week, starting next week, Monday through Friday, all about furniture design. So make sure, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the Fusion 360 YouTube channel, and you'll see in the upcoming live streams, you'll see that probably early next week. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to do lots of tips and tricks all about furniture design and what you can do with it. So wanted to give that plug. Jeff, I wanted to welcome you. Please, if you don't mind, introducing yourself and kind of giving us your background, and then we'll hand it off to you.
Sure, Brad, no problem. So, as Brad said, I'm Jeff Smith, and my background is industrial design. Brad and I actually work on the same team at Autodesk, and we're part of a white glove customer success team. But my background in industrial design started 20 plus years ago. I worked for a wide variety of customers, a wide variety of markets. I've made stuff in a lot of different parts of the world. I've spent a lot of time in different parts of the world making and designing things. I've been adjunct faculty for industrial design. My education background is from the Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, New York, and I'm also adjunct faculty right now, helping a little bit, which is quite fun. And I've been with Autodesk for about 6 and change years. I used to be on our education team, helping educators, and now I'm on our commercial success team, and I help customers have success. As I show you more about me, I'll show you where I'm a bit of a dinosaur at the same time as trying to be bleeding edge of technology.
Awesome. So yeah. So I'll be honest with everybody online. When Jeff shows some of his stuff that he's shown previously, it's kind of like walking out of an incredible movie, and you're just like, "What the heck did I just see?" I mean, the things that he does is just incredible. And I don't know if you're going to show this, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but he showed an example of where he modeled something in Fusion and rendered it, and then like did some industrial design, like sketching and modifying on that, which I was like, who would have ever thought? So just cool little tricks like that. I'm really excited about this. So
I am happy to share any process that helps people draw more. So I will for sure show that.
Cool. Yeah. In fact, share your screen. Yeah, because I'm assuming you're going to show some of your sketches, which blow me away. Yeah. Speaking of which, make sure you plug your Instagram and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead and share. Yeah. Let's see if that works.
Okay. Let's test it first. We're gonna go screen one and hit share. You got my Instagram page.
Let's see if it's gonna come across. Yep. Looks like it's working.
Yeah. Okay. So everybody, this is me on Instagram. As I mentioned, I am old school. I graduated college when there wasn't really a computer application, and you had to draw and design by hand. So all my drafting knowledge, all my model making, marker rendering, hard model and soft model making, it's all by hand. So that's my background. So a few years ago, I reluctantly started posting on Instagram, and I didn't want to do it, but like a lot of things, I should have done earlier. But this is me. But if you go there and scroll through, you'll see a lot of old school marker renderings, right? Sure, I do some digital renderings as well. This is the Fusion rendering. I'll show you this file as well. But a lot of stuff is, marker and pen on paper I also do digital sketching. So this is a native digital sketch using Sketchbook. I do digital as well because it's fun. Both are good. I do CAD modeling. I'll show you guys this model today. I do generative design. But because I'm of a certain dinosaur age where this is my world, drawing on pen and paper is kind of half my life. And then modeling in CAD and drawing digital is the other half. So I do a lot of things in that regard. Most people want to see me draw pen on paper, but I find all aspects of design interesting. So I'll come back here in a second, right? And I'll cite back to this. But I'm a huge believer in drawing, and I believe everyone can draw. Yes, I'm lucky to have had a career in industrial design where drawing is part of it, but I'd hedge a bet that almost every one of you or every one of your children, drawing was their first language. And they were drawing shapes before they were writing language. So drawing's in us all. And if you have the dexterity to tie your shoes, you can draw. It's just a matter of practicing and understanding. But it's not about drawing. Design sketching is a weird subset. It's not really drawing. It's communication, right? So it's about getting to the core elements, right? And I'll give you some tips and tricks for that as well. Okay, let's get enough of that, right? So I want to show you some fusion models, and then we'll switch over to Sketchbook and talk about Sketchbook as well and how drawing and CAD relate. Like, I'm a huge believer in the more you draw on paper or digital, the more you model in CAD, the bigger symbiotic relationship they have. They help each other. So, for example, right, this is a model that I built maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago at least. But it comes from a sketch I did, and let me find the actual sketch, right? We'll go a little faster here, okay, because I have a sketch that I did on marker, right? Come on, it's almost there. I'm in the right era, right? Okay, so here. So I was at coffee and with my kids and my wife, and I draw sometimes. I'm doing that, so I did this sort of flying car thing, right? And to be honest with you, if you look through my Instagram and you see a floating car, it's usually because I'm lazy, right? And it's like, what do I want to draw? And I can't think of something, so I'm like, oh, flying car, right? That's easy. Like, flying car is easy. So this is obviously a Camaro-inspired flying car, right? No wheels, nothing to deal with, just fins and vents, right? So it's a little bit cheating, a little bit taking the easy way out. But there's my drawing, right? So here's my CAD model, right? And this is me trying to get more comfortable with the form tool. My background is SolidWorks. I used SolidWorks for 17 years, right? And I also taught it, okay? So the parametric side of Fusion, both in surfaces and solids, makes complete sense to me, right? And the assembly side. But this purple button, you come over here with that experience and you're like, wow, what does this do? What is this crazy town, right? And this was my challenge to myself to say, how do I, do a drawing first and then come to grips with this, to me, what was crazy town at that time. And what's interesting is I treated this, and I learned a lot doing this, right? If I go back to the beginning of my timeline, right? And, whoops, wrong way. There we go. And I come back here, and I'll just roll back in this general area here, right? And you can see that I treated this like any other CAD project, right? I started here, and I gave myself a traditional drafting elevation. I did these in Sketchbook, and it basically transferred my intent, which was this one drawing from of it looks like. It's just a concept sketch, to a straight side elevation, to a straight top view, to a straight front view of what this would look like. And they're scaled and proportioned, so I have a place to start, right? Let me turn on my body here, and you can see that I have a complete failure in here. And I'll turn these canvases off. So this is me going into a form session, poking through it, saying, what am I doing? Like, this is just a bad result, right? And I show it to you because if you're not failing, you're not learning, right? So if you're scared of the form tool, open a file that doesn't matter and play with it. You have to be able to predict it. This is me figuring out how to predict it. So it's failure, right? And then we go a little bit further down the road, and you can see I did another form session, and I got better, right? So you're like, this is much better, right? This is much closer to what I want. And if I edit this form session, you can see that there's two things that are important here. One, I'm still failing, right? Because look at the T's in here. T, try, T, bizarre 4, there's tries over here, there's quad. Anyway, there's lots of things that are going wrong, right? But there's a couple things that are going right. The hood. Nice quads everywhere, everything's flowing, I got lines going. And then 2, I've got another surface sitting here. And that surface in front is the key learning of this. Because if you notice from my design intent, I had like an intake on the chin here, okay? And, if you've used form, or if you didn't, right, it's very easy to create this over and get this interior section and then push back, very easy. But a little harder to control precisely. And I'm doing this, and I'm thinking, do I want to do all these details in here? And it dawned on me. I said, wait a second. My background's surface modeling. I'm not going to care about that front. I'm just going to build a surface here that will generate a new surface that I will use to trim the other body, and then I'll cut it out with simple sketches. And then that's really the genesis of me saying, wait a second. I can use the form tool to generate overbuilt surfaces like I would with surface modeling, and like bang, I was like, okay, I have a pathway that works for me. And this is literally the first time I did it, and I've done it many times since then, but like I got it, right?
Yeah,
so
and Jeff, sorry to interrupt, what you're basically saying there is like you could have spent hours potentially trying to tweak your form to get that smooth front beveled edge, but you spent 2 minutes creating basically a flat face or a curved surface that you use to trim your complex surface. And this, I think, is huge. Yeah.
Correct. And I'll show you on the other Camaro as well, or the other spaceship. But the principle, this was literally genesis of me saying, I could do that. Because I completely screwed up here and how this dipped in and around here. I could have done it so much easier, but it was a learning experience, right? That's the whole point behind it, right? But I'll let it just play through and let it finish rebuilding so we can examine 2 more points on it, right? So what I also learned on here, for me, is getting a firm grip on component and movement inside of Fusion, right? So I've got these 2 fins on either side, and they're linked, right? So they articulate together with a motion link, and they're, part of a 4-bar linkage inside there, and everything articulates and moves together. So realizing that I had that live control and could manipulate my design and test it, like, I got to take this with me, right? The other thing is I didn't do anything for this view in any drawing. I didn't think anything about this. And when I built the engines, I only had like a little sketch of it from this view. So everything I did in here was on the fly, and I used the form tool to just quickly bang through this and extrude it out and push it through, and then I made a copy and pushed it in, and it gave me a really good intent for this, right? And it got me here, right? And that's good, But this is me learning. So don't be afraid to test, right? It doesn't always work perfect. You don't always finish it. But that process, if I would have done this, those 3 points wouldn't have come up to me. And I learned something doing it. You can always learn, right? So this is more of a traditional way to work. I did a drawing. I did some engineering style drawing, and then I modeled a CAD model, right? Completely valid, right? Works, if you've worked in the design world, that's a normal process, right? So, what you guys may or may not know is that I'm not using a mouse, right? I'm using a pen only, right? So even right now, I am pen only as far as driving this, and I'm using a Wacom tablet and their 3-button pen here, which I really enjoy. It's a great tool. But another test for me, as a CAD mouse user for God knows how long, was to build this with no sketches. All I had was an intent, and to use the form tool, and to not use a keyboard and not use a mouse. And I did it on just one screen, and I'll grab that screen. So I did it on this screen, right? There we go. So only this, no mouse, no keyboard, only pen, right? So again, challenge yourself, right? And this one here is very similar in the way I did the nose, right? I've got surfaces here. That's actually just a fill-in to go across those surfaces. And let's find the right form session here. It might be that one. Let's try that one. There we go. And so now you can see my form session, which is the main body on here. And look, they don't even touch. I built this intent out here, knowing that this body will generate a surface. This body will generate a surface. I'll extend them, trim them, done, right? And those surfaces will always follow these form bodies, right? So to be able to do those shapes as fast as you can in form enables you to do it. I literally copied the same one and put it over here in the back, and you can see the Ghost of Christmas Future here that shows what I did with the surfaces to make it a solid, right? So bang, you drive that through and you get that nice intent, and it's clean, and to do these complex shapes across the bottom. Something that also freaked me out with Fusion is, okay, let's say I built, my origin is here, right? You can see my origin and my spine plane is right here. This motor was easy to build, and then I just patterned it. But these wings here, yeah, the bottom one's in the right place, but I made myself think about it in a different way. So in my form session, I believe it's this one here, let's edit that, the wings here. So if you're coming from SolidWorks, this is a foreign concept, right? You never build something where it's not supposed to be. And in Fusion, it's so intuitive to articulate and move. So it was so easy for me to build this form shape, trued up to my world, rotate it, articulate it, put it where I need it to be, and then pattern from that location. I got used to it here. So having that ability and being able to try things in a new way really opened my eyes how I work, right? So super fun, to the point, you get the idea, right? Okay, so let's go one more step further, right? Let's go to the other side of the coin, right? So I've got this Camaro model, and if you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen it, right? I did this at the end of last year, mostly again as a test for myself, right? To go one step further in my form modeling technique. And because I showed you the floating Camaro, I'm going to show you the real Camaro, right? Which is not quite done yet. I'm still working on the old structure. But this is where that genesis comes to, right? And if I go back to my first form session here, and I roll back right ahead of that, okay? And I'm sitting here. What you notice is that form session generates two really nice surface bodies. But ahead of that, I've got some quick canvases in here, right? Let me go ortho faces so we can look at the side view there. So I got a quick canvas scaled with my wheelbase. I've got a quick canvas for the front, and I actually have one for the front and the back, and they're staggered apart, so it's easier when I look from the back view, then I see the back view, or I can turn the front off, and so on, right? And I got a top view as well. But remember the bad mistakes I made? Oh, I shouldn't say mistakes. I should say the learning experiences I had on the other Camaro, right? When you come in here and you edit this world and this form session, it's so much smoother. There's so much less going on. There's so much less extra stuff, right? Sure, I have a T point here. And I have a T point here. And I have a star 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 point here. Star points are not never have them. Just have less of them, right? T points are not never have them. Just have less, right? The world works better. It generates smooth flowing surfaces. And this didn't take me that much time to yield this really complex, proportionate form study of both the body and the greenhouse, right? So it's to the point, it's direct. And again, that genesis of using form as a surface modeler is super valuable. And I call this maybe a hybrid, right? Because I'm using it to generate this. And then from this point, what I do is I start to treat it like a surface modeler. So I built it as an entire piece, and then I cut it, right? And now I'm starting to think like a surface modeler, because now I'm going to work in halves, and I'm going to work on the body, and I'm going to start to cut things like the scoop intake, right? So now I've trimmed that top surface. Whoops, I don't want to go all the way. I want to go partial way. There we go. And now I've got a surface over here. I'm going to turn the greenhouse off that shows you a normal to insurance surface, right? That I can associate tangency or G2 to it, right? And now I have a surface coming down from the top that orients the other edge that will then be trimmed to gain this side over here and then this side over here, because if you are familiar with the form tool, getting this point here where three edges come together is the hard part.
Yeah.
But as a surface modeler, I know how to do it. So let's use that skill, right?
Yeah, and Jeff, one thing people are noticing is that you're not modeling this whole thing in one body. You're doing the windshield is separate from the main body, and like your 3-engine piece, you had like 6 or 7 different forms, and I think a lot of people think they have to start with one big blob of clay and mold it and tweak it, and that's not the case.
I went down that road.
Yeah.
I used to think I had to do it in one. Sure, you can have multi-bodies in one session, no problem, right? You can have multi-form sessions. One form section is easier to make relationships with itself, but you can have multi-bodies within that, and you can have multi-form sessions, right? Both that's valid, but I hope you guys can all see the logical workflow here of, using that form to control this element. I don't care about the glass right now. I don't care about the windows. I don't care about the roof. I want this. I'm caring about this. Right? That scoop right now is all I care about. So then you'll see, now I lost this side feature over here, and then you stitch it. Come on, go one more for me. There we go. And then let me turn this one off, and this one off, and that one off, and now you can see how it's all lining up. Yeah. Leverage your other skill set. It's just like You got to think of it this way. If you're only building with solids, you're missing out. If you're only building with surfaces, you're missing something else. If you're not using form as the unusual cousin of the brother and sister that is solids and surfaces, you're missing out. Because it's such a powerful tool to put in. Use the best tool for the job, right? And so now you come in here and you can clearly see that I offset the glass here. And I just did an offset surface, and I'm going to trim. Oh, I didn't play again. I will hit escape. There we go. And we'll go to where we were. There we go. And you can see that now, as soon as it trims it, one more, and I won't go too much crazier and bore you with this, but you get the point that it goes through here, and I build, and I extend these, and I use that only as a cut tool to trim that. Now I have my cowl pressed, right? And then I can trim the rest of it, and now I have basically an intersection between the cowl and the glass. Because if you look at your car, that's the way your car is built, right? The hood comes around the cowl, the windshield blends in, and this blends in, and eventually I blend that all together, right? So we'll just send it to the end, right? And you get the general point. But what really emphasizes this is this simple fog lamp down here. So you know that I didn't worry about this fog lamp in the form tool. And I didn't because it's really hard to make circles where it's going through something else in the form tool. Could I have generated that as another body in the form tool? Sure. But it was super easy to draw a circle and trim this surface and draw another circle back here and do this wall. Boom, boom, done. Right? And then it always lines up. So don't throw away your old school surface modeling. Just learn how the form tool can make you a faster surface modeler. You can totally take advantage of that and go down that road, right?
So Jeff, I'm going to
Brad, any
interject.
questions?
Yeah, actually, I have a couple. So Steve Sneed said he'd love to see like a video of like the whole process, and I don't know if you have something like that.
We can screen capture one, and we can do that. We can put that on the list, and we can do that for sure.
And I know there's
the background, and then we can upload that.
Yeah, I mean there's YouTube videos on people designing cars in Fusion 360, so I would recommend looking at that. And then I hope I don't butcher the name here, but Michael Lambe, I want to say this is his name. Do you always start the CAD model from a hand-drawn canvas? Can you share some tips or resources to learn hand sketching with pen and paper? I think that's an awesome question.
I can do it. So the answer, Brad, is, or Mike, I should say, is yes and no. So I've already shown you one model today where I did no sketch, just nothing, no intent, just built the CAD model, right? That was that one spaceship here. This one here, no sketch, nothing. Just I'm going to build a CAD model, right? So both sides are valid, right? A more traditional way is to have a sketch first, right? So that question kind of segues into what Brad had alluded to earlier, but let's go that way, right? And we can always come back to this side of the coin. So I'm going to stop that share, and I'm going to share screen 3. There we go. And you guys should have Sketchbook now, right?
Yep. And
this is a really basic drawing, and this is a digital drawing, okay? And so I can have a little bit of cable here. I'm drawing on a digital screen, so it's just a tablet, but it's a screen. But there's all kinds of ways to do it, whether it's an iPad, whatever. But the principles of what I'm talking about, it doesn't matter. If you've got a digital stylus in your hand, or you got a pen in your hand or a pencil in your hand drawing on paper, the principle is still the same, okay? But to Brad's point, this is a really good way to get into drawing, okay? And to use CAD as a tool to learn more about drawing, okay? So I've got my concept sketch here of my Battlestar Galactica Viper redesign, because I love to take things that are known and think about what would be the next version of that that didn't happen, right? So what's the original Viper redesign? Slightly not the newer one, right? But and like sometimes I'll take airplanes and do the same thing. I'm like, what if the jet age didn't happen and we redesigned a P-51 just a little bit more, right? So I enjoy doing challenges like that. So this is a sketch, right? Just a quick thumbnail. It's one color with a couple little background elements and a drop shadow, right? But here's where anyone that has Fusion knowledge can get better at drawing. I've been drawing for a long time. I can draw this drawing without Fusion, but what helps is using Fusion, okay? So let me turn off some information here. I'm going to turn down my sketch layer, right? And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to turn on my underlay layer and I'm going to turn that up. And what do you see? It's a quick Fusion rendering that was done in the desert, right? And let me turn off my underlay, the whole thing. And it's got the desert world in there, and it's literally a blocked in Fusion file. I hope that anyone on this live stream could build this, right? I mean, this is literally like a couple rectangles and 4 cylinders, right? And I built it in half and mirrored it. But as a designer, sometimes you're a little indecisive, and because you have a Fusion file, you're like, what would this view look like, right? Well, what would that view look like, right? What would that view look like? And it's super easy to generate, those views. And I went through college, and I learned a lot about technical drawing. I learned about, 1-point, 2-point, 3-point perspective, and drop shadows, and, lighting angles, and things of that. But if you didn't, the rendering is giving you the information, right? So this basic intent, what I do usually is I'll come in here. Let me turn that one on, and I'll turn that one off. And I am going to turn that off, and I'm going to turn this one on and make it a little brighter because it's important, right? So what I did is, let me turn that up and turn that off. So this is me as a technical illustrator, right? You can see these lines are going to my right vanishing point, and these are going to my left vanishing point. And this one here gives me a little bit of a vertical going to my third vanishing point. And all I did was use a combination of those two things, those and the Fusion image, and I started to do a drawing. And this is the drawing, right? So let me turn down the background, all right? And you can see that the Fusion file is super blocky, right? But what I've done is I've added detail to the intake, detail to the front. I added detail in here, detail in here. I added little cones on the back, right? But I added this little element here. But, it's still the raw pieces of the Fusion file. It's almost drawing Legos, right? Like you're putting these pieces together using the drawing below it. If I turn off the Fusion underlay and I turn off this layer, now you're like, well, here we are, right? We're in the ballpark, and if I give it just a little bit of detail, I trace the shadow, and now you have a nice concept sketch. And this is the exact opposite of what Michael brought up to say, do you always draw first? Not really. Yes and no, right? I mean, it's both sides of the coin, right? It doesn't really matter. Traditionally, you would probably say, yes, draw, and then build the CAD file. But in today's day and world, it took me, 8 minutes to make that CAD file and do a couple cloud renderings and call it a day. And now I can spend time drawing over it. I know it's proportionally accurate. and everything's right. So yeah, you can work this way, no problem. Everyone seems to have a problem with tracing, right? Like, well, tracing's not, it's not valid. Like, it's 100% valid, right? Whether you're tracing over your own work or whether you're tracing over a CAD file or a picture, it's how you get good. It's how you practice, right? It's a great way to speed yourself up, right? So I'm trying to answer that question.
My dad does a lot of painting, and he starts with a photograph, and then he kind of does the exact same thing, and he kind of traces over a little bit, and then he paints it, right? I mean, it's the same methodology. You're getting a lot of mind-blown emojis in chat with what you just showed, and I know this sounds really corny, but I honestly get goosebumps watching that methodology. It's like, who would have thought that you could start with a blocky model, and then the fact that you got that awesome perspective angle, with the ground and the mountains. I mean, it would take, how many times would you have tried to get the right view as you're sketching or whatever, but you were able to mock that up in 3D to help you with your 2D sketch, and that's just mind-blowing to me. So
time is money, Brad. Time is money. And if I can save time, that's what it's all about. Save time. So here's the other side of the coin, right? So this is a fusion rendering. If you're at the point where you've made CAD, right? I used to do this demo a lot for people sometimes when I'm talking to schools or customers, right? And, I changed the intent of the model digitally by drawing, not in the CAD model. So if I turn off what I did, you can see that I completely changed the shape of the window. That's the fusion model, right? And by adding in a color layer and a shadow or highlight layer and a highlight layer and a little bit of detail and a little bit of line work, your eye believes it, right? And so that took me like 5 minutes. It would have taken all of us a lot longer to modify the CAD file. So this is now the flip side, to say, wait, let me just do a quick sketch before I invest the 2 hours to change the CAD model to make sure I like it. So this is the complete other side of the coin, right, which is also valid, right? Because we're on drawing now and I'm on this monitor, let's look at, make sure I got TIFF files here, all right? Let's look at this one, right? Because being a designer, right, I am in this world of mass production, yet somewhere in this world of it's CAD, it's drawing, it's what is it? But when you present ideas, sometimes the finished quality of the image makes a difference. If you show someone a light sketch, there's a lot of open interpretation. If you show someone a polished CAD rendering, it looks dumb. So depending on your audience and depending on what level of finished or not finished you want, sketching can aid that. So this is a sketch I did to dumb down, pull back the finished quality of a CAD file. So by adding that sketch element into it with the line, you can see that it looks a little bit in process. But if I turn off the digital painted element, it is clearly just a CAD file. So being able to control that goes a long way, right? And being able to say, well, it's not a polished CAD file, it's actually somewhere in the realm of maybe a drawing, you can quickly blur those lines, right? And there's a time for both of those, right? And it's just knowing what that time is. Since Brad chuckled with Battlestar Galactica, let's go even deeper, right? So let's go with this TIFF file here. Come on, open it. This thing open. Come on.
It has a little cloud icon next to it.
That's weird. No one download that. Come on. Maybe we won't get to look at that one. That's weird. Let's try one more. Maybe it's just because it hasn't downloaded. Yeah, it's got a little cloud icon there. Why wouldn't they go download that?
Can you preview it? Does it let you preview it, Jeff?
Yeah, that's okay. We can go to something else there, but it should. Available status, available online only. But I am online. Let's just go one more quick check just to see. It'll be right here as well. It'll be in here. There it is. Now tip files. And, guess we're not going to look at that. Well, we'll do something. Maybe we'll just look at the video. Nope, we can't. We'll go to something else. Sorry, we can't go to Battlestar. We can't go to Battle Planet. Right? So, because I have... Let's go here then. Just go that way. So here's the other side of the coin, to Brad's point, right? So this is a sketch I did for an X-Wing redesign, right? So what if, the X-Wing went one model farther, right? We should do one more, right? So what I did here, and this one I didn't use a CAD file, but you could use a CAD file. I just used a quick image, right? And I grabbed an image of a model and then bang, you bring it in, okay? And then what I do is I do a series of line drawings to formulate my setup, right? And then I do a quick underlay drawing to capture my intent. So theoretically, by this time, I've done 4 drawings to get to here. And I've just traced over my work. So I cleaned it up, and then I go another layer forward, and I transfer those to a really clean line-drawn layer, right? And now it's super clean, right? Hand-done drawing, but it's digital, okay? And then because I'm an old-school marker renderer, right, I like to test colors like I would on a piece of paper to test it. Why would you do that on digital? I don't know, but I just am that way, right? And then you start blocking in colors, and you start to go down the road of adding in some highlight shadows. And if you're not comfortable doing all of this, you can find plenty of ways to do that on Fusion. And I go through here, and I do this process of adding in. I'm going to turn the background on so we have a little bit of mood, right? And then finish off with a little bit of color detail and glow for the engines, and you have this nice sort of like pulling all levels through, right? So that's a super fast breakdown of digital rendering with a layer strategy. I know it's not really Fusion, but it's Sketchbook and it's our world, and I've been a beta tester with Sketchbook for 15 years, so Sketchbook is part of my life, right? Okay.
I had a comment from
super cool.
Ethan that says, I've never seen something that is both so inspiring and so overwhelming at the same time. I mean, and that's why
take the inspiration.
That's why I made that disclaimer at the beginning.
That's okay.
This is amazing. So
I have been around the block. I'm old, right? I've spent a lot of time drawing. I've spent a lot of time tracing my own work. So practice is what it is. Practice.
So jumping back to Fusion, Jeff, so basically the key points we should be sharing with them is start we're calling it a sketch, which is confusing because you start with a sketch in Fusion, right? We're talking, start with a background image. And can you talk about that really quick? Like how do you bring in a background image, and how do you put them on a plane or something? I think that could be important.
Sure. So let me do that really quick, and then we'll go to the other side and talk about details.
Okay.
Right? So super easy, right? All you need is a plane, right? And if you go to insert, and don't get it confused, right? A decal goes on something, right? Like I'm putting an Autodesk logo on the side of this grip here, right? A canvas is a design intent reference for you to look at. Can you render with the canvas on? Yes, you can, right? It'll show. But think of it more as an intent, right? So if you go to canvas, it's going to ask you, do you want to insert from your cloud or do you want to insert from the computer? I'm going to grab an image from my computer, right? And I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'll just go to, let's go to demo, and let's just grab this image here, right? So I'm going to open this quick image here, and I'll say, okay. I'm going to open that. Now I got to select the face. It's going to go on that face. And now it's on the right. I can position it just like I would any other move. I can punch in my numbers. I can stretch it, right? Okay. So it's distortion. I'm not going to distort it though. I'm going to leave it at 1. I want to scale it, right? I can rotate. I can position as needed, right? Let's say that's good, right? So I've got that in there. It sits in here. You now have a canvases folder. If you notice, mine is slightly transparent. I probably have a setting that here under the canvas folder, you've got opacity control, and I'm going to set it at 100. Notice that it didn't do anything because my individual item has transparency. The last time I used it, I probably gave it 50%. I personally like to say individually 100% and say okay, and then adjust transparency with the folder. Right? To me, that's a nice way to work. The most important thing about canvases is once you have it inserted, because sometimes when you're scaling it, it's a little bit awkward to find the right size. If you right-click and you say calibrate, you can say from this point to this point is 100 millimeters, and it will scale it to that level. So, yes, you're still clicking, but that's pretty close for an intent, right, that you're going to use to trace over or whatever you're doing a fusion sketch with, right? So, super valid way to work, and it's in your world, and it's 3D. You can edit the visibility. You can do all kinds of things with it, but it's actually super easy, right, once you have that. And you've seen me show my drawing in there. You've seen me show a quick image I grabbed off Google, right, to get the reference for the one Camaro, right? So super easy way to work. Any questions there, Brad?
No, that's exactly what I was looking for. And you mentioned some keywords. You can put it on any plane, so it could be an offset construction plane, so your top view is above your Camaro, right, instead of in the middle.
Yep.
And
100%.
And we highly recommend that even just a pencil sketch, just kind of here's what I want it to look like, or even digital pictures you've taken of something, bring that in and use that as a reference. Like if I were to try and model a complex water bottle or something, I'd probably start with a reference image to kind of help me with my design. So, Jeff, we got probably about 10 minutes to go, plus or minus, so I'll stop interrupting you.
Let's talk about the other side of that coin, right? So, let me grab the rendering first so you can see. That is here, right? So, I built that file. You obviously saw it because I opened it, right? And so this is a rendering. This is a screenshot of that render, right? But this is the model. This is the fusion model of both the pen and the sketchbook. It's a fusion model. I took a picture with my phone of the cover of the model, and I mapped it in here as a detail. So I have this sketchbook, right? And so I took a picture, emailed myself the picture, uploaded that onto Fusion as a decal for the cover, right? And it's got a little reflection on there, but I did the same thing for the sketch. I have the real sketch, took a picture of it, and I just mapped it in as a decal. I posted this on my Instagram. Nobody noticed.
I know, I think that's so funny.
Thought it was a drawing.
Yep.
And I'm like, wait a second, that's a CAD model, right? The whole thing's a CAD model, right? But by playing with a little bit of depth of field, so the light here is out of focus, this is a digital model of a pen. It's a digital model of a notebook with a picture of a real sketch on there. And from a basic cloud cloud rendering standpoint, these are just the renderings of it. and it starts to look fairly real. But what's most important about the notebook is the oddity. So the pages are not all the same location, because they never are in real life. If I would have gone one step further and maybe added a little radii or a tear or a move, it would have been even more believable, but I'll buy that for right now, right? And so these are all native renderings of that file, okay? And so this is the file, right? And I've got a little bit of detail in there. I've got a light that I built on another file, right? And I've got a pen, and I did the string from another file as well. And I put it all together, and I built this, right? And it's all about using what you need. Brad asked about, canvases. Yeah, decals are pretty important too. There's a lot of elements that the decals can give you. So this is literally the pen, right? And so Lamy is a product that I use a lot. I love their pens. They're probably in almost all my images. They're super ergonomic. This front tri thing is super nice to grip, and it's comfortable. From a modeling standpoint, like doing this back as a revolve and adding some fillet, and the emboss here, or deboss I should say, and then a pipe for this clip, that's all pretty easy stuff, right? That's, just take the time and it works out, right? But what's complicated is this compound surfacing here, right? Because this is curved up, back, and arcs down, as does this, and this is going in the opposite direction. And it's also a try, so you're building 1/3 of it. The key is to know what to tackle, right? So if you come back in time, and I go back here, I tackled that first, because to me, that's the most important part. To come in here, the rest is all I can get it. This is what's important. So you have to start there. That's the most difficult part. And to be able to come through here and build these surfaces, right? I'm just backing up a little bit. That's a revolve with a simple loft, right? So I've got a loft transition from an arc to another arc here. And it's a surface intent. And you can see as I go through that, I cut it, I loft it, I did that loft, I go on the other side, I mirror it, I radius the top, trim, 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 mirror, trim, trim, and now I'm here with 1/3 of the pen and the hard part done. Revolve it, blah, 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 go through the front. We just want to get to the pattern. That's what's important, right? Because the front's all revolved, and then you pattern it out, and you get this nice intent. And if this works, everything else works. And then you build it into these nice components, and it's all organized and nice, and your browser is in the right position, right? We got 5 minutes, Brad. Where do you want me to go now?
Well, so somebody asked, couldn't you just use the fillet command to do those two end curved surfaces? But like you said, it's curved in three different directions. Yeah.
Correct. This one here is arcing down as it's arcing up at the same time. You might be able to do a fillet, but I wanted to control it exactly.
Right, and that's the key word right there, is you have control over these surfaces. And the other thing that I've seen you do, and you don't have to dive into it, but you're able to change those surfaces, and it changes your model. So you can always go back and make a slight change to a surface, and it updates. Which is incredible too.
100%. That's
the
parametric side of it.
Yeah. Somebody asked the question, which I'm curious too. Up in your menu across the top, you have like a little sideways 8 infinity symbol. They were just curious what that was. Oh, okay.
That is Swift Calc.
Yeah.
Right? I have only used it once. I was working with a customer who wanted to do this long equation, and Lars actually suggested, he's like, oh, go look at Swift Calc. And then I put the add-in in to see how it worked, and it's quite interesting if you have to do some long equation and you want something in there, right? I usually have like the one of the rendering applications in there or something of that nature. I use a couple things here and there for the bolt-ins. But yeah, the infinity symbol is quite interesting.
Right. So there's a couple questions. I'm just going to kind of go through them really quick. Somebody said, what resources would Jeff recommend for surfacing and sketching?
For surfacing, I would start on the Fusion YouTube channel. And there are surfacing tools on there, right? There are some good tutorials. There are a couple other good tutorials. And what I'll do after you post this, Brad, I'll go grab some links and drop it in the comments after this post through. There's some good links for a surfacing learning in Fusion, both for form and for surfacing. For drawing, right, there's plenty good resources out there. Like if you're not, go follow Spencer Nugent on Sketch a Day. That's a really good way to get into sketching. People like myself on Instagram, we post a lot of drawing. Michael DeTulio posts a lot of drawing as well on Instagram. There's plenty of good resources. Look up hashtags like design sketching, right? Or industrial design sketching. There's a lot of information. But definitely go follow Spencer, right? Spencer Nugent at Sketch a Day, right? Is a really good resource on YouTube. He posts a lot of drawings, right? That's what he's all about, is drawing. And I was answering a Fusion question for him today as well, because he texted me. He's like, how do we do this? And I'm like, well, you just do this. And I was like, oh, okay.
So
literally true story. He texted me earlier. So.
Well, and I honestly, it's really funny because, like I said, my dad's a painter. He's also a photographer. You mentioned the Sketch a Day thing. He does a photograph a day, it can be on anything or whatever, and that's how you get better. So we're going to do a Fusion a day. So everybody out there, create a model in Fusion, and like for example, this pen. Would I start with this? Probably not, but.
No.
Take something off of your desk, and try modeling it, and then, how would I do that pen? Could I do it with surfaces? Could I do it with freeform and all that kind of stuff? Somebody says you're the Bob Ross of Fusion. I thought that was really funny. So.
Say again, Brad.
Somebody said you're the Bob Ross of surfacing and Fusion.
Happy little surfaces, right? So don't be afraid to go into the form tool and build something that's super complex and say, oh, that's really cool, right? And play with it. You know that you can then move it, right? And do simple things. Whoops, I want my body. I want that body. And I want to move it up. And I want to say, okay. And now I'm going to draw a sketch down here using simple things. And I'm going to draw a circle, right? Okay, great. And I'm going to say extrude, and I'm going to say one-sided, object terminate here, and now it ends in that surface.
Yeah.
And that's super easy. You come back into the form tool, and you edit that form tool, even though it's down here, right? Doesn't matter. I move this. You finish form it, update, solve it.
Yeah.
Really easy things to do and play with and start to get comfortable with that purple button because it is your friend. It's unusual, but it's your friend.
Yeah, and kind of to review real quick, somebody said they wanted to see how you did the airplane, and basically...
Oh, I have it.
Yeah, so... We'll use it on the thumbnail. So to give everybody online what he did, this was a challenge for Jeff. He wanted to not only learn different kinds of surfacing, but he wanted to do joints and assemblies and all that kind of stuff. And so this was his challenge to himself, and now it's a data set. So
I completely forgot. I really forgot. Yeah, totally. The Corsair here is a total, like Brad said, this was a challenge for me, right? Like, modeling the shape wasn't the hard part, even though, I did some canvases in here for both intent on the side views and intent, and I did some, modeling, but this is me, trying to figure it out, and I do have a form session here for my fuselage, but more importantly, it's really about the joints, right? And creating movement and controllable, predictable movement. So it's all organized into nice, clean. I've got, my engine and prop. I've got my engine cover. I've got my vent array, my main fuselage, right? My wings and tail. Everything's all organized in these nice little subgroups, right? But the point being is you've got all these joints here, right? You can clearly see them. Okay, so right off the bat, my propeller spins, nothing major. That's a simple revolute joint, right? But when we go to the bottom, things start to get quickly faster, crazier, right? So both gears articulate together and rotate with a motion link, and all four doors close together. But what's super interesting is that this surface, I built the gear down. So have you ever seen this little capture position side over here? I built the gear down, I set up the drawing, I collapsed them, and then I cut out this body here from the wing and attached it through a rigid group to the wheel gear, so now it took it with it.
Yeah.
So it'll always line up. This surface will dictate this surface. And obviously my gear doors are the same way, right? But if we go 2 steps further, right, so obviously my horizontal stabilizers move, and my tail moves, my gear wheel articulates, but then when you move the gear in, the retention hook stays in its position. And I can articulate and move that in. I can shut my doors, right, if I close them all the way. And then I've got 2 different things going on here, right? So one, I have inverted aileron control, right? And then technically, here's where things get weird, which I haven't quite finished yet. Oh, sorry, the canopy. Whoops. The canopy slides open and close as well, but all 6 flaps articulate together.
That's
right?
cool.
And they all go down through motion link together. And I have to attach this. I haven't figured this one out yet. How to get this flap to close with the wing, right? And still go with its siblings. That's what I'm working on, right? But the one that's crazy is if I revert back here, I got all these vent arrays for my cooling doors, right, to articulate together. So they all open and close in unison, right? And they all, obviously the top and bottom one doesn't open because it's not supposed to. But they all go together and articulate as one group, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Fusion does a really good job of patterning things, right? So it does a really good job. Like when I patterned these, I was frankly amazed how it handled that and how I did that, right? So, again, if you zoom in close, right? Whoops, too close, right? This isn't about being a perfect image, but, it's got little bolts and details in there, and the wing. And again, the prop is a form tool, right? And I just twisted it, like oh, I'm done, right? Yeah. And then I capped the ends, right? So I built it as an open cylinder, and then I did a surface patch for the end, because it's faster. Like, done. Right? Yep. And you get this nice look out of it.
So Jeff, I could spend hours just watching you show examples and stuff like that. So I really appreciate you taking an hour out of your day to kind of let us get inside your brain a little bit on how you think. Like I said, every time I watch you, I get goosebumps. Honestly, it's like weird. Just the methodologies that you show, with the sketching, and we didn't go in depth into how to do surfaces and G2 continuity and all that kind of stuff. That really wasn't the point. It was more to let people see there are multiple different ways to get to your final product. And the first, I will admit, I was just like you. The very first form I did, I tried to use one ball of clay and make this really complex shape, and it ended up looking awful, right? But as soon as I started doing multiple ones, I'm like, oh, this makes way more sense. And it's just tips and tricks like that. And we're getting the comments. People are like amazing, mind blown, stuff like that. I really appreciate everybody. Jeff's a genius. I agree with that.
What are we going to do about that one? We're trying.
So cool. like I said, I could keep going here, but I think we'll end here. Jeff, I really appreciate you doing this. I have a feeling people are gonna ask for you to come on again, maybe, and talk about maybe just like T-splines, tips and tricks with just T-splines, for example.
Sure. We can do that, and we can do how to do an underlay. Like I do a lot of demos on how to set up a fast Fusion underlay to then draw on. We can do form. We can do motion.
Awesome. One other question I saw that scrolled by, somebody was asking like if they were interested in a tablet. Because they were even asking, were you doing your sketchbook stuff on a tablet? I said, yeah, absolutely. That's all tablet. So what would you recommend? I mean, we know Wacom is a popular brand.
Sure. So if you want to think about it, right? There's a few different methodologies, right? So I'm using both today, actually. So you have tablets like this. If I can turn it the right way, move it the right way. You have tablets like this in Tuos. That is it's not a screen. It's basically like a giant trackpad that picks up a pen, right? So that works great. Not as good for drawing, but for operating CAD or your computer, it's great. Awesome. Okay? And then I have what you call a pen display, right? Which, you've got ones that hook up to the computer, that work great, and they're a screen as well, that you can draw on with a pen. Then I've got ones that are standalone computers that are a screen and you can draw on it, but you can do it with an iPad, right? You can get Sketchbook on your iPad and use an iPad pencil. Yeah, no problem, right? Really, it comes down to what do you have first and what's readily available to start. And if you like it and you get better at it, there are even better tools to buy, right? If you have an iPad and you want to do that and that's where you start, great. Work just fine. Sketchbook will work on it. There's all kinds of tools you can use. Sometimes I use my phone and I'll finger paint with my phone. I'll draw a hand drawing with a pen, take a picture of it, bring it to Sketchbook, and then I'll literally paint with my finger in Sketchbook on the phone. And just for something to do on an airplane or something. It's kind of relaxing, actually. But I don't care if you draw on copy paper, right? And start, right? Just whatever you got. There are all kinds of tablets out there. Just know what it is. Is it an iPad? Is it a tablet where it's just like a giant trackpad? Is it a screen where it's attached to a computer? Or is it like a Wacom Mobile Studio that I have, or like a Windows Surface, right? And they all work. There's just different levels of what they're good at.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Cool. Well, everybody, thank you very much. I apologize for the audio issues. Thanks for putting up with us. Jeff, it was a blast having you.
Happy to help.
Yeah, and hopefully this gets everybody's gears turning, and we're going to see some cool stuff on Facebook. I have a feeling here pretty soon, Instagram, etc. Like Jeff mentioned, kind of take a look at the description of the video once it's posted out on YouTube. We'll add some links in there that might be beneficial to help you guys out. So with that, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jeff, and have fun fusioning.
Okay. All right.